Ivan Marchenko, commonly referred to as the most sadistic Nazi guard, is a name that sends chills down the spine and sparks urgent questions about how ordinary people can commit extraordinary acts of cruelty. In this video, we're uncovering the unsettling life journey of this Ukrainian-born guard who went from Soviet POW to one of the Nazis' most ruthless enforcers. Buckle in, because we're delving into a chapter of World War II history few truly understand. Ivan Marchenko was born on March 2, 1911, in the Ukrainian village of Serejoga, then part of the Russian Empire. Life in the early 1900s was anything but stable, especially in regions destined to become war zones. As a child, he would have witnessed the aftermath of the First World War and the early rumblings of political turmoil that gripped the region. By the late 1930s, Europe was inching toward another global conflict, soon to be the deadliest in human history. When we say that Marchenko's background mattered, it's because people often assume war criminals must come from thoroughly evil or fanatical origins. But Marchenko was an ordinary soldier in the Red Army, at least initially. Nothing in his early life suggested he would become infamous for sadism. That drastic shift underscores how quickly the tides of war can change someone's path. World War II erupted on September 1, 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. This act triggered a global conflict that would soon engulf nearly every major power. Surprisingly, for a time, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were allies, having carved up Poland together. But this tenuous alliance imploded on June 22, 1941, when Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of Soviet territory. In total, more than 3 million German soldiers, supported by roughly 650,000 troops from other Axis allies, advanced in a sprawling front from the Baltic to the Black Sea. The initial Soviet losses were catastrophic. Millions of Red Army soldiers were taken prisoner. Among them was Ivan Marchenko, who had joined the Soviet infantry on May 27, 1941. Captured on July 10th, he found himself thrust into Germany's brutal POW system, an ordeal that killed over half of the Soviet POWs by war's end. For many Soviet soldiers, capture all but guaranteed suffering. The Nazis viewed them through a racial lens, condemning Slavic peoples as subhumans. As a result, captured Soviet troops were often left to starve or succumb to disease in overcrowded camps. By war's end, some 3.3 million Soviet POWs had died, making them the second largest group of Nazi victims after the Jews. The question then arises, how did a man like Marchenko survive when so many perished? Initially, he was sent to Camp A in Kelm, Poland. POWs there faced dismal conditions, minimal rations, rampant illness, and forced labor. Yet Marchenko lived on, and in October 1941, a grim twist of fate diverted him to Troniki, a camp designed to mold Soviet POWs into auxiliary police for the SS. Troniki wasn't just another internment camp. It was a specialized training ground where about 2,500 men, virtually all Soviet prisoners, were groomed to serve in the Nazi hierarchy. Known as Troniki men, these recruits learned to carry out the most sinister aspects of Hitler's final solution. Being selected for Troniki likely promised better food and living conditions, but at a severe moral cost. These men would soon facilitate genocide. By early 1942, Ivan Marchenko was already rounding up Jews in Lublin, acting on Nazi orders to deport them to death camps. It's chilling to think how swiftly he pivoted from Red Army soldier to working for the very regime that had just captured him. Did he do it to survive? Was he coerced? Or did he embrace the role willingly? The historical record is murky, but his subsequent actions suggest a man who took to violence readily. Operation Reinhard was the coded name for the Nazis' plan to annihilate Poland's Jewish population. Central to this plan were 3 major extermination camps: Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka. These were not traditional concentration camps with forced labor components. They were factories of death, designed for the swift and systematic murder of Jews. The Troniki men became a key labor pool, staffing guard posts and escorting trains to these killing centers. It's important to highlight that these guards, mostly from Eastern Europe, played a large role in facilitating mass murder. They managed the ghettos during deportations, forcing terrified families onto trains that led straight to the gas chambers. While many people assumed the face of evil in the Holocaust was exclusively German, the involvement of non-German auxiliaries broadens the scope of culpability. In May 1942, Ivan Marchenko was assigned to Treblinka, one of the most lethal extermination camps in Operation Reinhard. Though less renowned than Auschwitz in popular culture, Treblinka was shockingly efficient. Historians estimate that hundreds of thousands, mainly Jews from the Warsaw and Radom districts, were murdered in less than a year. The process was ruthlessly choreographed. Trains arrived, victims were herded off, and within hours, most were asphyxiated in gas chambers. Treblinka's design was deceptively simple. Prisoners arrived at a disguised train station with a fake clock and a ticket office, which lulled them into thinking this was just a transit point. The SS and Tranicki guards used any means necessary, vicious dogs, clubs, guns to control the crowds. Amid this orchestrated chaos stood Ivan Marchenko, who quickly gained notoriety for his cruelty, adding extra layers of torment to an already unthinkable fate for the prisoners. One of the most compelling windows into Treblinka's horrors comes from survivor accounts. Holocaust survivor Yosef Charny, who was just 16 when deported, remembered how Ukrainian Tranicki guards would use wooden boards to cram people into train cars or gas chambers until they formed a single mass of bodies. The cruelty was unimaginable. Charny spoke of prisoners driven mad by thirst, some resorting to drinking urine. He also recalled the final cries of his sisters, Hannah and Gita, before they disappeared, never to be seen again. Stories like Charny's matter because they transform cold statistics into devastating realities. We're no longer dealing with abstract figures, but real families torn apart in front of each other. Charny's recollection is a stark reminder that individuals such as Marchenko were active participants, guards who pushed, shouted, and shot their way through the day-to-day mechanics of genocide. At Treblinka, the guards orchestrated a massive deception to prevent large-scale panic. Incoming trains of approximately 50 or 60 cars would stop at Malkinia station, where about 20 cars at a time were detached and brought into the camp. Disembarking Jews were greeted by a platform disguised as a functional station. A wooden clock, phony timetables, and even a make-believe ticket office were strategically placed to foster the illusion of normalcy. Many deportees had already endured unimaginable brutality in urban ghettos, but a faint hope lingered that they were simply being relocated. That facade was critical to the Nazis' operational efficiency. If the victims believed in a semblance of routine, they would be less likely to resist. Tranicki guards like Marchenko forced this deadly charade, using deceptions, threats, and outright violence to march people to the gas chambers with minimal chaos. The shift from POW to perpetrator is a question historians still wrestle with. For some Soviet prisoners, joining the Nazis as Tranicki guards might have appeared to be the only way to survive. The alternative, languishing in a POW camp with a mortality rate exceeding 50%, was grim. Others harbored deep anti-Soviet sentiments or anti-Semitic biases, making it easier for them to align with Hitler's forces. And a segment likely relished the power and cruelty they were authorized to wield. Ivan Marchenko's behavior suggests more than just mere coerced compliance. He was reputed to be exceptionally sadistic. It's a controversial but crucial distinction. While all Tranicki men were complicit, certain individuals stood out for their relish in tormenting prisoners. Marchenko's name resonates among Treblinka survivors and historians for precisely this reason, highlighting the monstrous capacity that can emerge in certain individuals under oppressive systems. A little discussed facet of this story is how the presence of Tranicki guards impacted local populations in Poland and Ukraine. While the German occupiers spoke a foreign tongue, Tranicki men could often communicate with local people, making them more relatable or, in some cases, more manipulative. This linguistic and cultural proximity sometimes gave them a veneer of familiarity, potentially heightening both the sense of betrayal and the guards' capacity for brutality. Moreover, the Tranicki program left lasting scars on inter-ethnic relations. Some Poles and Ukrainians resented these men for aligning with the Nazis, while the Jewish survivors grappled with the reality that their executioners weren't always German. Unraveling the moral responsibilities in such layered situations remains a scholarly challenge, but the records show that Czarniki men drastically heightened the efficiency of Nazi genocide operations wherever they were deployed. Like many war criminals, the ultimate fate of Ivan Marchenko is murky. Some documents imply he continued to serve in various Nazi units until the final days of the war. Others suggest he may have died before the war ended or vanished amid the post-war chaos. Still more confusing is the fact that Ivan the Terrible became strongly associated with John Demjanjuk, a different individual who was later tried in Israel and Germany. This conflation has led to controversies in historical circles. Researchers debate whether the Ivan the Terrible persona was a composite memory of more than one guard, or if Marchenko simply shared a first name with Demjanjuk. Yet survivor testimonies often point to a distinct Ivan Marchenko as a uniquely vicious figure, feeding the notion that multiple equally sadistic Ivans served at Treblinka. Unlike high-profile Nazis who were captured and tried at Nuremberg, or Demjanjuk, who faced multiple trials decades later, Marchenko's post-war record trails off. There's little indication he was ever brought before an international tribunal. Some Czarniki men managed to blend into displaced persons camps or falsify documents to immigrate to Western countries. It's possible that Marchenko used similar methods to evade accountability. The unsatisfying truth is that a significant number of Holocaust perpetrators slipped through the cracks. Even nations determined to pursue justice after the war were overwhelmed by a deluge of cases. Investigators focused on prominent figures, allowing lower-level collaborators like Marchenko to vanish into the ruins of a defeated Germany, or slip back into the Soviet Union, depending on the circumstances. It's a stark reminder that history doesn't always come with neat endings. So why should middle-aged Americans or anyone without direct ties to Holocaust history care about Ivan Marchenko? One reason is the cautionary tale of how quickly moral lines can blur in wartime. War upends societal norms, enabling ordinary people to carry out appalling crimes under the banner of nationalism or survival. Marchenko's story highlights the complexity of collaboration, where a POW from a persecuted group became an instrument of persecution himself. Moreover, exploring Marchenko's trajectory enriches our collective understanding of the Holocaust beyond the most commonly cited camps and figures. It underscores that genocide involves layers of complicity, from high-ranking officials to foot soldiers who do the dirty work. Perhaps more importantly, it challenges the notion that they alone were responsible. The Holocaust was a multinational, multifaceted operation requiring thousands of individuals to function, from Nazi administrators to coerced or willing collaborators. The tragic irony of men like Ivan Marchenko is that they belonged to a group the Nazis deemed inferior. They were, in essence, perpetrating genocide on populations who may have been treated similarly by the Nazis under different circumstances. This paradox invites deeper reflection on the mechanics of oppression. Sometimes persecutors turn one subjugated group against another to maintain control. Whether Marchenko's involvement was driven by fear, opportunism, or inherent cruelty is a question historians may never fully answer. But the brutality ascribed to him goes beyond following orders. Eyewitness accounts describe him as relishing torture. This aligns with testimonies that a subset of Czarniki men exhibited a horrifying enthusiasm for violence, thereby intensifying the terror within camps like Treblinka. The legacy of Treblinka and Marchenko's alleged deeds still reverberates. Families like the Charnies saw their loved ones disappear in front of them under the watchful eyes of Czarniki guards. For survivors, the trauma doesn't vanish when the war ends. It follows them for generations. Some never found justice, as many guards and officials vanished or received minimal punishment. From a broader perspective, the story of Treblinka underscores humanity's capacity for cruelty and the perils of unquestioned authority. We also see how genocide depends on countless smaller acts of complicity. Each guard, train conductor, and bureaucrat played a role, and men like Marchenko turned that role into a personal theater of sadism. That's precisely why it's so urgent to remember these histories, even when they're deeply uncomfortable. By the war's end, the Czarniki camp was disbanded, and many of its guards scattered, In subsequent decades, nations like the United States, Canada, and the UK discovered that some Trauniki men had immigrated, often under false pretenses. Sporadic efforts to denaturalize and deport these individuals took place well into the late 20th century. John Demjanjuk, notoriously tried in Israel as Ivan the Terrible, is one example, though he was later identified as a different guard. The confusion between Marchenko and Demjanjuk underscores the tangled records left behind by the war. It also speaks to the extraordinary difficulty survivors had in recalling specific individuals in a sea of uniformed men. Despite these challenges, historians keep examining archival material and survivor testimonies, striving to clarify the record. In the end, every piece of evidence helps us better comprehend the scale and nature of Nazi atrocities. Ivan Marchenko's path from ordinary Ukrainian villager to sadistic Nazi guard is a testament to how war can reshape destinies and unleash the worst in certain individuals. It also reveals the complicated layers of survival, collaboration, and brutality that characterize the Holocaust. While we may never know what precisely became of him, his shadow looms large as a reminder that behind every massive atrocity are real people making choices, sometimes unimaginably evil ones. By grappling with these stories, we not only honor the memory of victims but also equipped ourselves with knowledge. Understanding how someone like Marchenko emerged from the chaos of World War II can prompt us to question our own capacity for empathy, or, in darker scenarios, for cruelty. It's a lesson that transcends time, urging vigilance against hatred, tyranny, and the seduction of power. Thank you for watching. Truth be told, exploring Ivan Marchenko's unsettling story reminds us of how thin the line can be between ordinary life and unimaginable cruelty. Hope you found this video helpful in shedding light on a lesser-known dimension of World War II history. If you want more deep dives into the past and to help ensure these stories aren't forgotten, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us going. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.